Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI Brand Response Council. These 20-minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry are scheduled twice a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a quick housekeeping note. We'll be addressing questions from the audience at the end of the session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them, and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. Today, we are welcome, Amit. You got in, you made it. The episode today, checking in on the supply chain, harkens back to February when Take 20 focused on the supply chain issues facing performance and direct-to-consumer marketers in a 2-episode series that shared the viewpoints of logistics providers, brand leaders, and more. 9 months later, what's changed? Is consumer demand being met? Are overseas manufacturers still facing challenges? Are ports still backed up, or have troubles eased? And how are performance marketing leaders feeling about the coming holiday season and serving their customers with the products they want? PDMI Brand Response Council Chair and Take 20 host, Chris Foster of Modern Postcard, is here today to dig for some answers to these questions and more. He's joined by logistics leader Greg Kent of Medallion Fulfillment and product expert Amit Khubani of Ontel Products. Team, take it away.
Fantastic. Amit coming in like a beautiful balloon drop. Yes.
Coming in hot, guys. Coming in really hot. But
as you do and as you are, and welcome in. I'm so glad that you guys are able to join us. I really appreciate it. Like Thomas mentioned, we touched on supply chain earlier in the year in February. It's a big hot topic and a lot of different issues and a lot of different types of challenges that needed to be overcome, especially post-COVID and all the adjustments that were made. At the time as well, there were ships outside of Long Beach stacked waiting to bring product in, as we were talking about it during the episode. And so now we're kind of taking a look and saying, well, what's changed now? Now it's towards the end of the year. We're getting into 2023, a brand new holiday retail season. And some of the things have changed. And one in particular where there's an article from Forbes where they were saying that a main reason for easing supply chain issues is that more manufacturers and business leaders are using more purpose-built solutions in AI-enabled tools. And according to a recent Gartner study, the level of machine automation and supply chain is going to double in the next 5 years, and the Internet of Things platform is predicted to grow from 1.7 billion in 2018 all the way to 12 billion in 2024. So clearly there's some AI automation and some technology happening. The question is, does that trickle down to the mid-market? Will it be here to help us? But beyond just the technology, there are new processes, new products. The industry is changing and you guys are having to adapt with that. So that's what we want to dive into. Really appreciate your time. And Greg, I'd love to start with you. Okay. You have a global fulfillment solution. Yet one thing that you also have begun to start offering is Amazon and shopping cart integration services. So it seems like a business that you've had for 20, 30 years suddenly has found itself in the last 3 to 5 years having to add new services and change and adjust and adapt to the new e-commerce technologies.
Yep. So basically the industry is going to all this web-based shopping carts and integrations, which actually is causing a lot of headache for the 3PLs, trying to keep up with the demand from Amazon and the restrictions and time delays and time restrictions that they're putting on the 3PLs because everything's being automated.
So I'd like to dig into a little bit more. What do you mean by time delays and time restrictions?
So because everything's being automated and everything is being done by computers, they're putting, Amazon is putting, time delays, meaning that orders that come in on a Friday must ship by a Monday, automatically doing chargebacks on a Tuesday, when they don't see that what the back end is doing as far as the amount of orders that do come in versus the amount of what is physically possibly to be able to construct. It's a very difficult platform to manage.
So Amit, you're nodding a lot when Greg's saying that. Does that sound familiar?
Well, here, like this is, at the end of the day, platforms like Amazon, right? Like, notorious for difficult to manage timelines. Like, you guys have all heard the stories of, like, like, their line workers who work in their warehouses may have plastic bottles sitting next to them. And it's not because they like to stare at plastic bottles, it's because it's the only way to relieve themselves in this timeline that Amazon has set forth for their expectations. But that's really nothing that's super new. Like, anytime you have, like, like the manufacturing structure, there's efficiency scales, right? And when it comes to shipping, unfortunately, like, we're fortunate for the customer, unfortunate for everybody else involved within the process. Like, their timelines are, like, sometimes unrealistic. But they, like, Amazon's not the only one to do it. HSN has done this, and QVC has done this for a really long time, where orders have to be out within 48 hours of them being received. See, where I think the distinction here is, like, if our 3P is shipping products to someone like Amazon, especially if you are graced to be a vendor that has the ability to ship as a third party using Prime, like, or like, you're a vendor central vendor, and you have a Prime listing, although Amazon's not holding your product. That's actually a really big benefit to you, because you're not beholden to how much inventory Amazon actually has. They can work off the inventory that you carry, yet still you get the conversion bump of having that Prime badge there.
Right.
But, like, there's very specific requirements to be a Prime vendor. So just, like, it's really challenging to be able to meet those timelines, but there's certainly a huge benefit there, because your conversion rate will double if you do meet those timelines. Like, and unfortunately, they're becoming the market leader in this, right? Like, they're going to demand that this happens. And it's not only like Amazon. And what's the real issue is there's just continuously new platforms that pop on. There's CED Commerce for Mercado Libre. There's Miracle for, like, Bed Bath & Beyond, rest in peace. There's, like, all of these different, like, almost like, like, vendors are just popping onto a platform that works for them, and we are expected to then integrate with that particular platform, despite it being challenging to integrate. But it's like, this is now, like, a new form of expectation. This is the new EDI, right? Like,
that's we're gonna. It's funny, you talk about keeping up with platforms and requirements. Right before the preamble, Greg, you had mentioned that exact same thing, putting that kind of pressure on the 3PLs and your team.
Yep, it is true. Keeping up with the platforms and the requirements, regardless whether it's Amazon or Shopify or any kind of online system that they're using right now, it does create quite a challenge for the 3PLs to make sure that they're still up to date with all of the systems that they have, the upgrades and the rulings. Things are changing on each of the platforms every day, and causing a lot of stress on on both sides of the operation.
Well, and what's interesting in terms of the stress that you've got right now, tell the audience a little bit more about kind of how you see the flow of business. So it's not just the stress from the new platforms that you're operating under and some of those time delays, but also the idea of product and where kind of either normal flow versus what you would maybe talked about as overflow, an overload flow. How are you managing that?
Well, that part is probably our biggest challenge as we speak right now. The last, I would say, last 3 or 4 years, for the past 30 years, we had no problem with space. But within the last 2 to 3 years, we're overloaded with inbound product that we still can't get caught up with. I'm still receiving containers from last Christmas. that are coming in, and what we've found is that our clients are worried about the possible shutdowns again from all over the country, and they're overbuying. So I've got an abundance amount of inventory compared to what is actually going out. And the biggest issue right now is space. Space requirements for this overflow inventory is becoming obsolete. I know we had talked about earlier that there's a study out right now. We're based out of California, and they're saying that it's anywhere between 1% to 2% available space in the whole California for warehouse space. So everybody's having challenges of, busting at the seams. And in fact, even here at the warehouse, we actually had to revert to bringing in outside sea containers into our parking lot just to cover some overflow space.
Right. Right. So Amit, as a company that manufactures product, how does Greg's lack of space or containers in a parking lot impact your business in order to be able to actually create new product, get product in, and distribute that?
I mean, I think when COVID first really started happening, when it's like March, February of 2020, everybody kind of tightened their belt a little bit as far as the manufacturing side. And it was, what had happened was the customer still wanted to buy things, and because the customer was pulling products through the supply chain, retailers were reacting, and they were trying to buy whatever they can to get onto their shelves because they were now barren because the customers were buying so much. And as manufacturers supplying to these retailers, right, we were trying to manufacture. We then got a kickstart. We thought we were going to tighten our belts. That didn't happen. We tried to bring in everything that we could, and then we realized that, and I think everybody did it at the same time, so it really stretched the logistics of the containers and the China ports and the US ports. All those systems were severely strained, especially in an environment where people were getting sick and there was quarantines, and so you had to manage a lot of different factors. So the block there was just purely logistics. It was just, it was a manpower issue. Like right now, what's happening in the market is those restrictions have eased up. The factories now have ample supply of product. Containers are back down to $3,000 a container. They're getting even cheaper, right? So the restriction of flow of products is no longer there. And as we continue to bring product in, it's estimating the similar amount of demand, where the chain now stops is at the customer. The customer has now stopped buying things. So while retailers were packing their stuff and bringing in product, assuming the certain level of demand, we were supplying to retailer demand, so bringing in whatever we can. Now container rates are starting to ease up, so bringing in things that we hadn't brought in before, and the customer has just stopped buying things. And
right.
That's this is a new phenomenon. This was not a phenomenon over these last couple of years that we've had to deal with. And that's now where every manufacturer that I talk to has too much product. Every retailer that I talk to has too much product. And it's only because the customer has tightened their belt.
Because it's not flowing through.
They're trying to buy food, which is way more expensive. And they're trying to get gas for their non-electric cars, suckers. And so, so they don't have a lot of money left. Of those $20 that they had left at the end of the week that they were going to buy something impulsively with, or $50, that went to gas and it went to food.
Sure. And what I think, what I love about your comment and that insight, Amit, is that you realize it's not just a supply chain issue, and that it doesn't live in its own little ecosystem, that it's inextricably tied with consumer spending behavior, and that the supply chain and consumer buying behavior is actually one large flow and ecosystem, right? And any blockage in that entire flow creates blocks up up the chain, right? And so the fact that everything finally now is like, yes, we got all of our stuff working, and then the customer doesn't buy. So it stops the flow of goods at the customer point, and maybe retailers have to, put in more discounts and sell things at lower margin and the like. So it's an amazing flow of not only goods and services, but it also ties into the global economy, right? This is the global economy actually, being reflected in the day-to-day lives. And I guess, Greg, maybe that's one thing I'd like to ask you in terms of the kind of global connectedness of the business. I understand you're going to go to the East Coast to check out some warehouse. You're clearly in Los Angeles or Southern California. You've got global connections. How do you see this flow?
Well, I'm feeling the hurt on the West Coast. I don't have so much of this issue on our East Coast location.
Interesting.
So I don't know, and I also don't have enough knowledge to do that analysis yet, whether it's more of a West Coast issue than an East Coast. But it seems like my customers on the East Coast have been able to manage that inventory flow a lot better than my West Coast customers. But it is a difficult situation one way or another.
So I guess one question that I would ask both of you as we start turning it up, and Amit, I'll ask you first. What's your magic wand prognostication for 2023? Does the entire chain start evening out so that products and brands can have a normal flow of being sourced, being distributed, and then being purchased by customers? Or do you see even more adjustments and changes, because we've had nothing but change the last 5 years?
I mean, is run for the hills an acceptable answer, or?
Yes, I'm actually quoting you. Run for the hills, Amit.
No, look, obviously nobody has a crystal ball, and if the last 3 years will tell us anything, it's expect the unexpected. So I think, like the optimist in me wants to think that the supply chain seems to be evening out. Whatever recession we were, like predicted to fall into, that was a long-lasting recession. Like you're seeing signs that it's not quite as bad as one would think. So hopefully that won't be as long-term. I think, like perhaps, like the people who did have a lot of money and were spending it on more experiential things, like maybe that's starting to curtail itself a bit. So that comes back into goods and services. I mean, it were goods at least. And if that happens to be the case, and like I think the positives here are that the freight has normalized. And in my opinion, aside from just pure corporate greed, like inflation was caused by freight. Like that was such a huge impactful thing, and it hits every, like food inflation caused by freight. Yes. Like high inflation was caused by freight. Like every oil inflation, like it's freight too, right? So like it seemed like the logistics piece of it, because it had gone up so much,
so quickly,
so quickly, and it was just like you didn't have a choice but to pass it along. You couldn't
Correct.
absorb it because it's 5,000% increase. So I think as that starts to normalize, like like the optimist in me wants to think that prices will come back down to earth and everything will kind of normalize and people will have the money to spend on other things. The pessimist in me thinks that when has anybody ever lowered their price once they've established a price, right? Like who gives a discount? Like hopefully free market should balance that out, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
Right. And I think that's one thing that I'd heard on a marketplace report, that corporate profits are at a high because the prices are still so high, right? It's right to preserve those margins that they had when they raised prices a while ago. Greg, I'd like to leave it with you. So what is your big plan for 2023? What's the big change that you are preparing for?
Well, I think with Amit as well, I do feel that it's going to level itself out. Our biggest plan is to try to continue what we're doing as far as the service level goes. The products should level out. The inventory should die down. But I also agree, I don't think the prices are going to go down.
Right.
I feel that, a lot of these marketers and merchants, they lost a lot of money in the last couple of years because of these high increased pricing. So this is their chance to possibly try to make something back on that and to level out the field. But as far as we're going, we don't really see any much of a change per se for next year.
Wonderful. Well, you guys, this has been fantastic. It's already past the 20-minute mark because you got so much. We could do this all day. But Thomas, I'd love to field some questions from the audience at this point.
Yeah, we have a few. Actually, I think I'm actually going to lead with the most recent one because it's actually interesting. For Greg, what does a 3PL like yours do with product that was scheduled to arrive for Christmas last year, but is only arriving now? Do you take it? Do marketers, retailers, or consumers still want it?
Well, most of the customers that are bringing in the stuff that are from last year are just newer models to the same thing that they have. So it's still marketable, or it hasn't hit the market yet, or they planned on doing it for last Christmas, but they held off now because they lost that timing. For instance, if you were selling a pair of skis, you're not going to bring them out in the summer. You're going to bring them back out in the winter. So once they lose their marketing timeline, they usually wait to the next year.
Yeah, makes sense. The one for Amit here, and this actually goes back to the conversations we had earlier this year, both on Take 20 and also in Miami, because we were talking so much about container prices, and someone mentioned it in the question here. I've seen that container pricing has dropped 70% since peaking late last year. Amit, have you seen this, and how is it helping your business?
I mean, certainly helping our business. I was going to make some kind of stupid joke, but I feel like, yeah. I don't think they're stupid. That's why I make them. But I've discretion is a better part of valor. So I think it's certainly helping in terms of profitability. Like last year, I know a lot of people who own a lot of businesses that supply product, and I don't know a lot of people who made a ton of money. So I think that's probably a challenge. And, most people that fall like our products for us, they generally fall into an impulse category. As much as I'd like to think somebody's going to get up off of their couch and go and buy a battery available at Costco, they probably are not. But when they're buying batteries at a Costco, for example, and they happen to see one, impulsively they will buy these things. So by nature, they need to be impulsively priced. So it's not like we could be like, okay, cool, we have a 5,000% increase in freight or a 500% increase in freight costs. Let's tack on that price to these products. It's like nobody's going to pay $30 for this thing. They need to pay $20, and that's just how this business works. So we had to absorb it. So I think just from a profitability standpoint, I think it's going to be good. I think that's probably going to be the big plus. We had to cut back on items that we were bringing in that didn't actually make margin anymore. I think the example that I had used was pillows. We manufacture a lot of pillows, and the container rate was $20,000, and we fit 3,000 pillows in a container. That's $7 per unit. And if we're selling a product for $19.99, $7 on top of your cost is just not going to make it, right? So we had to cut back on the amount of pillows that we brought in. Now that the freight rates have normalized, we're able to bring back products, and we're able to kind of get back some businesses that we've lost if the businesses are still there to be had.
Sure.
Makes sense.
Fill my warehouse up.
One more here. This is kind of a free-for-all, whoever wants to go for it. Obviously, we had COVID, then Russia, Ukraine, which is ongoing. There's always the tensions between the U.S. and China. What concerns do you have about those ongoing tensions, and what issues that could raise that could prolong the supply chain issue?
I'll jump in on that. I think that the recent, quote unquote elections in China solidifying that regime is going to have an interesting effect on their posture. And I think that economically and sociopolitically, I think it's going to be much harder to negotiate lower rates and lower logistical smooth operations because I just don't think we're going to be in a friendlier spot. I might be completely wrong, and I'm not an expert in geopolitical politics, but if that trickles down into your gentleman's expertise and how you see logistics running, that's what I would see as kind of an undercurrent that wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, Greg, do you have some thoughts here? I've got a few thoughts, but
Yeah, see, I don't, because I'm just more on the end user side, so I don't really get any of that kind of feedback from my customers.
okay, yeah. Well, from like we manufacture a bulk of our products in China, so if China happened to say take a walk into Taiwan, and what happened with Russia and Ukraine is any precedent,
right?
I think we would no longer be manufacturing products in China if we wanted to have stuff, right? If like every U.S. like, I almost think it would be so massively detrimental, and it's not only like we're the only people who manufacture products in China. Literally every product that you guys likely have in your home right now is manufactured. I'm just looking around and I'm trying to find
this fantastic high quality plastic stand that my computer's on?
Yeah, that absolutely was not made in Idaho.
I was going to say that was made in Indiana. No,
it's not potato plastics. No, but like it would be extremely detrimental, and I think it would damage both parties so severely that I think it's it's almost something that will keep China from doing it. But that being said, I don't know. It would be massively painful, I think, for everybody involved, and I don't think logistics would be too much of an issue because that would stop.
Right.
Like if manufacturing stopped there, like I really don't know what would happen. And it kind of actually falls back into AI and automation because we started postulating what would you do if, right? And what would you do if China did go into Taiwan and and we were not able to buy products from China anymore? What would we do as a business? And so we went through an entire thought exercise, and the one example that we came up with was Tesla, right? Like Tesla is able to manufacture products wherever they want to manufacture products because their reliance on the human capital side of it is not a detrimental factor or too cost prohibitive because of they use so little actual employees, right? It's full automation system to manufacture their things. So whether it's China's employee rate or it's the United States employee rate doesn't really doesn't really matter because you're not using a ton of them either way. So we were like, well, how do we buy machines that manufacture ours? Do we buy 3D printers? Do we buy filling machines? Do we bring molds over here? But really, when we went through the whole thought exercise, it's not only about the product itself or the manufacturing process in itself, but it's about raw materials. And just to have that steady flow of raw materials, nobody else is equipped to do it currently like China.
Sure.
And even in India, I'm from India. Well, I'm from Queens, which is kind of like India, but originally we're from India. And we've looked at manufacturing in India and we've tried and we speak the language and we can pay bribes just as well as anybody else can. So it kind of, is a system we would be somewhat comfortable for us. Nobody's there, nobody's there yet. So to answer your question, Bob, run for the hills is what we would do.
I love it. Amit, run for the hills. Wonderful.
Way to bring it back around, running for the hills. So, hey guys, thank you so much. I mean, we could obviously go on this topic for quite some time, and perhaps we'll do that sometime soon. We appreciate the wisdom. Look forward to following this as it continues to evolve. For those of you out there watching, your next scheduled opportunity to attend a live online Take 20 episode is next Wednesday, November 16th, as we take a look at the state of the media marketplace midway through Q4 and looking ahead into 2023. It's been a bit of an unprecedented time for both buyers and sellers. What's next? Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. In addition, registration and hotel reservations are now open for PDMI East, our next in-person event set for March 20 through 22, 2023 at Eden Rock, Miami Beach. That's March 20th through 22nd of next year. Through December 31st of this year, you can take advantage of our early bird badge special to gain entry to this event for a $100 discount per badge. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-East for more information and to grab your badge today. Thanks again to all of you for checking out this episode of PDMI's Take 20. Be well, take care, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.